Díomh gúil dúí hapus. My apologies, I appear to have started speaking in tongues there for a second. Of course, that was meant to be Happy St David's Day in Welsh. And you can all tell me how badly I butchered the pronunciation of that in the comments below. So today we've got a Welsh whisky for St David's Day, because St David is obviously the patron saint of Wales. This is a Penderyn. This is kind of the standard expression, entry level. Now I think this stuff, it's been around for a really long time, and they just call it Penderyn single malt Welsh whisky, and it's the Madeira finish. So it's a little bit unusual that their standard expression is a Madeira finish. Madeira cask finish treatments aren't that common in the world of whisky, but they've chosen a Madeira cask finish for their standard expression, and I'm pretty sure it's always been that way ever since this first appeared. And that was actually quite a long time ago. The Penderyn Welsh Whisky Distillery was founded in 2004, so that actually makes it 2 full years older than the first modern English Whisky Distillery, which is of course the Norfolk Distillery, or St George's as they used to call it. Here, it's my home distillery here in Norfolk. Back to Penderyn though. Penderyn are a little bit unique in that they distill their whisky very high ABV, actually comes off the stills at 92% ABV. For reference, Scotch whisky by law can only be distilled to a maximum of 94.8% ABV. So with this one, you may or may not be correct in expecting a slightly lighter spirit. It's very safe to say though that the production methods at Penderyn are actually quite unique. They're using some very unique stills. If you have a look at their website, there's a little bit of information there and some photos and diagrams of them. They're actually using column stills and Faraday stills. Now Faraday still is kind of like it's similar to a Lohmann still. So it's essentially kind of like a pot still, but some copper reflux plates in the neck. And those reflux plates are probably part of the reason why they're able to go to that very high strength of 92% ABV coming off the stills. Now going on to the physical presentation of this whisky, I predict that it's going to be a bit of a divisive presentation, in that some people are probably going to be a fan and some are not, and honestly I'm kind of not. So the first things first is the elephant in the room, the box on this one. It's one of my real pet hates, that boxes that don't protect the whisky probably shouldn't be there at all. And this one really doesn't. You look at this, it's completely cut away on the front, almost from top to bottom, and on the side, Jeff would like this one. But there's very little protection there from knocks and impacts, dust or sunlight or anything. Really, you've probably got less than half of the bottle actually protected by the box. So it's more of an advertising, little bit of trim, rather than an actual functional feature. Worse than that, it's got one of these stupid little tongues in the top as well. So you can actually take the bottle out quite easily through the front. It's probably easier than taking it out of the top. It's also got this bizarre little reflector in the back there. So this packaging for this whisky, it's obviously been designed to catch and reflect light on the shelf in the shop, and to catch your eye and make the spirit really shine and glimmer and sparkle, rather than actually be a functional feature. And it's kind of like something that Ralphie was mentioning fairly recently. He was talking about the presentation of whiskies in boxes, and he predicted that in the near future we might have luminous bottles lit up on the shelf, glowing at us and trying to catch our eye, because that's the kind of marketing BS that the whisky world is heading to in some areas. Now, this one isn't luminous yet, but I think it's definitely a good example of packaging as wasteful faff rather than a functional feature. Not a fan. As for the bottle that this one comes in, well, it's certainly striking, it's unique and it's eye-catching and it's different. Give you a little close-up, not too close, it's very tall. Try to get that all in the frame. So the first things you notice about the presentation on this one, which I think You probably love it or hate it. I can't see many people being indifferent to this whisky and its presentation. It's a very, very tall bottle. It's clear glass, so you're not getting protection from the UV from any colouring. And the most bizarre part of this bottle for me is that it's not round. And not only is it not round, it's got these weird fins on it. And apart from the fact that it stops it turning in the box, and they've got like Welsh gold written on there, which is quite nice, I like that. But no idea what this is about or what they're for. Got some symbols and some Welsh on the other side. So to be fair to them, the Welsh people that run Penderyn Distillery, they're taking pride in their home nation and their heritage, which is a great thing. And this bottle is definitely unique and eye-catching, but it's not really to my tastes. To me, it kind of looks like a glass 1920s Art Deco space rocket. In their defence though, this stuff is bottled at a very healthy 46% ABV. We know from the back label that it's an effective contraception and it's also non-chill filtered. I don't know if you can see that, but it does say non-chill filtered. And no mention of natural colour on the bottle, but it is on the box. Speaking of that Madeira finish, which is a little bit unusual. Madeira is obviously a Portuguese sweet fortified wine, and it's made, where is it made? Madeira. And Penderyn must get through a hell of a lot of Madeira casks, because they've been using Madeira casks on every bottle of their standard expression for years and years and years. And I do like Madeira casks. I think that it works very well with Scotch whisky, or any whisky, a lot of the time. I think that along with Amontillado and Sauterne is another cask finish that I really like. Unexpectedly, I think that works really well. I am a fan of Madeira casks in whisky. So let's get the cork out. I've actually had this bottle for quite a while. I bought it possibly a year ago, and I've been going back to it occasionally. And spoiler, I like it. I think it's a decent value whisky, and at the price it sells for, it's a good purchase. But I've basically been saving this one, trying not to finish it, because I've done lots of English whisky. I think I've done English whiskies on St. George's Day. I've done tequila and mezcal on Cinco de Mayo. I've done Irish whiskies, but I don't think on St. Patrick's Day. And of course, when your hobby is Scotch whisky, pretty much every day is St. Andrew's Day. So Penderyn Madeira finish on the nose. Exactly what you might expect. The first thing that I get on the nose of this one is a sweet, rubbery, green grape note. So that's almost certainly coming through from those Madeira casks. Bit of a wine gums note. Sweet, light, fruity, a little bit of a confectionery note. Surprisingly aggressive, raw oakiness on the nose. A little bit of vanilla on the nose and a little bit of peppery spice, which possibly betrays a little bit of youth in this whisky, but not a real showstopper. In with that vanilla, I'm also getting a little bit of a marshmallow note and a slightly youthful starchiness. There's just ever so slight signs throughout this whisky that it's on the young side. Also getting a slight acetic quality, and I don't know if that's coming through from the base spirit or if it might be another facet of those Madeira casks. And I'd not even say that it's a bad thing. It's possibly even a good thing. It's a little bit of character, makes this whisky interesting. Some people might say that that's another flaw of this whisky, but I like it. So let's see how it tastes. So that is a completely natural colour, non-chill filtered Welsh whisky you're looking at there. Reasonably clear, with a slight bit of haze. And it might be the case that this is a bit more on the clear side because of that high distillation ABV and the fact that they're putting it through slightly unconventional stills. but at least we know that it is natural colour and non-chill filtered. They haven't taken anything out of this whisky or added any additional nasties in that weren't part of the original production method. So on the palate of this one, getting more sweet white winey notes, more wine gums, a little bit of a fruity, slightly musty fruit melon note, and I do think that that's something that I quite often get with other whiskies that I've had from Penderyn. Also a slight starchiness on the palate of this one, a little bit of a creamy vanilla note. I think all in all, the flavours that you get on the palate of this whisky are very pleasant, slightly simple, and a little bit raw. And again, that's probably reflected in the likely youth of this whisky, but I do think that it's enjoyable and very well made. Let's have one more sip. The finish, and again, possibly something to do with that high distillation ABV and the fact that it's a whisky that has a light, delicate flavour profile. I'm going to say just medium length on the finish, and it's a sweet finish with a touch of salty oak and a little bit more of that musty fruit melon note. So I've said a few good things and a few bad things about this whisky, so slightly mixed, but all in all I do like this whisky. I think that it's very well made whisky, and I like that it's not copying Scotch too much, but I think that it will appeal to the vast majority of Scotch drinkers. One thing that does concern me a bit about this stuff is that from memory it doesn't seem to have changed at all since I first tried it, and I think it's been well over a decade since I tried this. I've had a few bottles of this over the years, and to my memory it seems exactly the same as it always was, which on the one hand is a little bit disappointing, because Penderyn, they've been around for a very long time now. They're not that much younger than the Isle of Arran distillery, and when I've talked to Welsh Toro about this whisky, I think he kind of agrees with me that there's a bit too much youth in this one, and it would be nice if they were pushing something that was a little bit more mature and a little bit more spectacular. It seems like they've kind of decided that this whisky, at this recipe and this presentation, is kind of where they want their flagship or sort of entry-level, forward-facing, available release to be. And I think that highlights a really important dilemma that all or almost all new distilleries are going to face in their early years. And that's, how far do you go with maturation? What's your vision and what's your intended mature final end sort of we have arrived final product? Because we've got to be realistic. Most new distilleries aren't going to be in a position where they can do a daft mill and just sit on all of their maturing casks until it's 10 years old before they sell any. Most new distilleries they're playing against the clock. They've got to start making money, and with a minimum 3 years where you can't make any money at all, most of them are going to be thinking we need to make money as soon as possible. Now, obviously some distilleries go the route of making gins or sourcing other people's whiskey and blending or independent bottling, but eventually all new distilleries are going to be in this situation where they have to decide, what are we going to do? What is the best interest of this business? Do we sell all of our oldest stock and try and impress people and get customers and win the hearts and minds of the whiskey enthusiasts? Or do we hang on to some more of the old stuff and put out some more easily achievable age statements or no age statement whiskies to kind of look after the future of business? Like I said before, it does kind of seem like Penderyn have decided that this youngish release has kind of reached the point where it should be. Or rather, they decided several years ago that it had reached the point where it should be, and they're not improving that recipe. On the one hand, that is a little bit disappointing for a distillery that's nearly as old as the Isle of Arran distillery. But on the other hand, I think that this is a very affordable and available expression, and it probably doesn't matter too much for what is an entry-level bottle. It's an interesting problem though. So, going back to this whisky in particular, is Penderyn Madeira finish something that's worth buying? Is it something that should be on your radar? Is it something that should catch your attention? Because it's good, and not because it has a piece of foil in the background, that's not why we should be buying whisky. I think yes. I think this is an enjoyable and very affordable and well-priced Welsh whisky. And I think almost the saving grace of this one is going to be that they appear to be making a very healthy supply of this. They must be putting out a lot of bottles, because at least here in the UK, this stuff is available frequently on discount across various UK supermarkets. And to their credit, they're doing that with a good presentation as well. You would think that selling to supermarkets, you have to operate on reasonably thin margins, because you see this stuff in the supermarkets fairly regularly, under £30, and Penderyn are doing that while still offering a natural colour, non-chill filtered 46% presentation, and that's kind of achievement in itself. It's really good that they've not compromised on that presentation, and I think if you are a Scotch drinker and you haven't tried this, you probably should, because it is a step up from most of those other kind of affordable, available, special discount regulars that we get in the supermarkets, and it's a really good introduction to Welsh whisky. So let me know if you enjoyed this video, and if you like this one or Welsh whisky in general, and how enraged you are at my pronunciation of the Welsh language. Thanks for watching, and cheers.